The economic survey is a precursor to the union budget and is usually released a day before the budget. The survey has two parts. One part talks about how the economy performed during the last 1 year. It takes a stock of the performance during the last 1 year. And the other part talks about the big ideas, the big reforms that we can do to help the economy achieve its maximum potential in the next 1 year and over the medium term. So I'll first talk about the key takeaways from the economic survey from volume 1, which is how the economy performed in the last 1 year. Coming to growth first. The survey expects Indian GDP, real GDP, to contract 7.7% in FY21. This is broadly in line with what most of the agencies, domestic and international, are expecting, including the RBI, the CSO and the IMF. All of them are expecting real GDP contraction in the range of 7.5 to 7.7%. So the survey forecasts are broadly in line with other agencies' forecasts. And given that the base is so low this year, the expected growth rate in FY22 is likely to be much sharper. So the real GDP growth rate, expected growth rate in FY22 is 11%, and the nominal expected GDP growth rate is 15.4%. So that implies a deflator of 4.4% in FY22. And this broadly matches our in-house view for GDP growth in next year. Talking about this year, the GDP contracted by 15.4% in H1, and the expected contraction in H2 is much smaller at 0.1% contraction. So that gives us a full point contraction of 7.7%. So between this year and next year, what is expected to drive growth? The survey has pointed a few likely drivers of growth next year, and they include a focus on infrastructure, spending on infrastructure. It also includes the boost to domestic manufacturing sector through the PLI scheme. Also, we could see some pent-up demand entering the market. If spend on discretionary consumption that was not there in FY21, that could enter the market in FY22. And as the vaccination in the country progresses, we could also see services sector picking up meaningfully in FY22. And all these 4 to 5 factors combined could drive GDP growth in FY22. Regulatory forbearance, there is a dedicated chapter on it in the economic survey. And they have drawn upon the lessons after the global financial crisis in 2008. So they said that even after 2008, there was a regulatory forbearance given. And that forbearance probably lasted for way too long. It lasted till 2015, that is for 8 years. And maybe it was not required. Such a long regulatory forbearance was not required. And what happened because of that was banks misused the forbearance to extend loans or reclassify loans even of unviable entities. And that led to the big NPA problem in the banking sector that we are experiencing now. So we should draw upon the lessons of the previous regulatory forbearance and keep one thing in mind, that regulatory forbearance is an emergency medicine. It's like a life support. Only when the economy is in a critical condition, you can extend regulatory forbearance. But after you see green shoots or after you see signs of recovery, the forbearance should be withdrawn and the economy should be allowed to recover without the life support. This was an interesting topic that was covered in the survey. And the last point I want to cover here is the inflation front. So, in the last few months, there has been a lot of noise about the suitability of headline CPI as the monetary policy, as the target of monetary policy. And the economic survey sort of agrees with it. It says that a big part of India's CPI basket is food. 46% of India's CPI basket is food. And food prices mainly change because of supply constraints. So it's either production losses or transportation issues or cold supply chain management. Because of these issues, food prices change quite drastically, and they don't necessarily respond to monetary policy. And because a big part of your headline CPI is driven by supply constraints, you should look through that or give less and less importance to headline inflation going forward and give more importance to core inflation. So this was a policy prescription that was given in the economic survey, and we'll see how policymakers respond to this. We look forward to the union budget on February 1st to see what is the finance minister and the government's vision for the economy in the next year and in the years going ahead. In one of our reports, as soon as the onset of COVID pandemic happened, the argument is, or the hypothesis is, the lockdowns or the restriction on movement, they disproportionately affected people who were least able to afford or least capable of dealing with it. For example, people in the informal sector, low wage earners, people such as taxi drivers, maids. Restriction on movement affected them more than white collar employees, because of which income inequality, which was already quite bad, is likely to worsen over the next few years in the medium term. And this has implications for consumption, this has implications for growth in the medium term. So how do we tackle this problem? What do we do to arrest worsening income inequality? The survey suggests that the best way to do it is by ensuring rapid economic growth. So they have cited independent research, they've cited research from the World Bank, they've cited other independent researchers. And all the research seems to suggest that 80 to 90% of the sustained decline in poverty during any period of time happens because of rapid economic growth or rapid rise in the mean income in a country. And only 10 to 20% happens because of redistributive fiscal policies. So a very small part is because of fiscal policy. Majority of the reduction in poverty comes when you focus on increasing the economic growth very rapidly. So make sure that there is a tide that lifts all the boats, and that will ensure that the worsening income inequality is arrested. The fiscal multipliers are disproportionately higher during an economic crisis such as this one. Hence, we should take advantage of it and increase spending, and there should not be a misguided turn towards austerity. So this is basically a policy prescription in which the economic survey is saying that you should go out and spend and do not worry about debt sustainability or fiscal deficit at this point of time, because it's not likely to be a concern, at least in the near term. The second big idea, which feeds into the first one, is the sovereign debt rating. This has been a persistent problem in India. This has been a persistent complaint, so to say, because the previous chief economic advisor, Arvind Subramanian, he also raised this issue in the economic survey a couple of years ago. And now the current chief economic advisor, Krishnamurthy Subramaniam, has also talked about this. This shows that the thinking in Indian policy, Indian government or Indian policy makers is that India's fundamentals, economic fundamentals, warrant a better sovereign debt rating. So the survey argues that you look at all India's economic fundamentals, for example, your real GDP growth, primary balance, current account balance, adequacy of forex reserves. You look at any parameter, India deserves a better credit rating, and even the softer socio-economic parameters such as rule of law or political stability or control of corruption. In all these cases, India is an outlier as compared to peer BBB minus rated countries, and hence we deserve a much better credit rating. Imports contracted at a much sharper rate than our exports throughout FY21. For the first time in 17 years, we are likely to see a current account surplus of at least 2% of GDP this year. So this basically summarizes how the economy performed in FY21 and a brief outlook for FY22. Now I'll talk about the big ideas that were presented in the economic survey. That is the crux, or that is the soul of the economic survey, so to speak. So there are 4 to 5 important ideas that I want to cover that were discussed or presented in the survey. I'll start with the most important idea, the most important topic that was covered, and that is debt sustainability. So there was a lot of concern about how India's fiscal deficit could lead to the debt becoming unsustainable over a medium to long term. And the economic survey has addressed this issue. So the main argument they have presented is, you should not worry about debt sustainability. You should only worry about keeping the differential between interest rate cost and nominal GDP. So as long as the weighted average interest you pay on your debt remains lower than the nominal GDP growth, debt will be sustainable. In fact, over a period of time, the debt to GDP ratio will fall, not increase. Hence, typically in India, this has been the case that our interest costs have been much lower than our nominal GDP growth. And even in the foreseeable future, so the survey did a simulation till 2030, that is for the next 10 years. And their simulation showed that at never, even in the worst case scenario, debt sustainability is not likely to become a problem. Hence, we should only focus on keeping the differential between interest rate and nominal GDP high. So nominal GDP growth should be higher than the interest you pay on your debt. And as long as you ensure this, debt sustainability will not become a problem. In fact, the debt to GDP ratio will fall over a period of time. It also said that the fiscal multiplier, that is, what you get in return for 1 rupee spent, if the government spends 1 rupee, the output it is likely to generate from that 1 rupee, which is essentially the fiscal multiplier. The fiscal multipliers are disproportionately higher during an economic crisis, such as this one. Hence, you should take advantage of it and increase spending. And there should not be a misguided turn towards austerity. So this is basically a policy prescription in which the economic survey is saying that you should go out and spend and do not worry about debt sustainability.